Hey, you summoned a lesser maker. Recently, Games Workshop announced that they're going to release the Sigmarite Chapel of the Empire for Warhammer The Old World. And this is a re-release. I think a lot of the design elements are cool. And overall, I think this is a neat kit. For $52, I know for a fact there is a better way to spend your hobby bucks. So on my Patreon, you can download a free template with a bunch of free STLs you can get without a subscription. So go check them out. Instead of paying $52, you're probably looking at the high end, maybe $12 of crafting materials and a bit of a time investment. But honestly, there are so many bits in this kit, it might take about the same time for you to assemble this yourself from scratch than it would be from you cleaning, demolding, and everything. It's a pretty easy trade-off in my opinion. So let's build it together.
To build this, you're gonna need foam core. I get mine from the dollar store. 1/2-inch XPS foam, I get mine from Amazon. Balsa, basswood, or popsicle sticks for the wood details, and plastic straws, we're gonna use that at the very end. It's also really helpful to have a miniature for scale. I typically use the same one for every project. You're gonna need hot glue and a box cutter, and super glue accelerant really speeds up the process. We're gonna be taking reference photos from Games Workshop's website, and I 3D printed some STLs from my building accessories STL pack. That's another STL pack that's completely free. And for this project, I modeled up these wood jut outs, and I really like how these look. These ones are also free. This whole building is built on a stone foundation, kind of like a brick layer. A lot of people would cut out individual bricks at this point, but I like to glue the whole foundation together and then stamp in my bricks with a paintbrush that I've crimped the end into a rectangle. This speeds up the process a lot, and honestly, I think it's a better result. Got these Viking army men. They're from a Russian company. These are gonna act as the statues from the kit, and I glued this directly onto the foundation, and I textured everything with a rock before I went ahead and did that stamp texture. This is an original Mordheim kit door, and I just think that's a fun detail. I went ahead and did the bottom level walls, and I glued them on the inside edge. That way the brick layer is jutting out. To reinforce everything together, I put a balsa wood strip around the edge just to kind of mimic that detail that was on the kit, and then I stamped in the brick texture. This is really fast, and I do think it looks really good. The statues on the outside of this building, I honestly think is a weird detail, and it doesn't make a lot of sense in my head, but since it was on the kit originally, I thought I would include it. Speaking of details, the chimney is coming out of the middle of the roof in the kit, and it doesn't have any structure or anything hinting that there's a fireplace built into the wall. So I added a chimney detail in and made sure to include that on this build. At this point, the 3D printed bits have 3D printed, and I was really happy with how these turned out. When I design things digitally, I kind of do them haphazardly, and I'm a DIYer, so I don't really expect much, but these look really cool, and I was really happy with how these turned out. Let me know what you guys think. And if you like this video, make sure you like, because it goes a long way to make sure that other people can see this video. I really appreciate that. Now we're finishing off the second floor, and you have to make sure that you texture all this foam core before you install it with the rock. Really helps make it look like plaster when you do that. Trust me, you don't want to be texturing it after it's already installed. It's possible, especially with like a really clean build like this, but it's not easy. This plaster piece is a cast from a mold that I made several videos back where I experiment and try casting for the first time. So you can go back and check out where I made that. And there are several other plaster bits, like there's a pig architectural feature that I'm going to be using several times on here, and I really like that bit. I think it adds a lot of character. Now we're installing the roof. When I make templates, I don't include this shape. I like to add a bit of a swoop and an arch on the top to make sure that it adds a bit more character. And I added the 3D printed bit for the jut out on the roof to match the miniature on the Games Workshop site. I broke off separate pieces of balsa wood to kind of hang off the edge of the side of the roof. And this is so that the edge of the cardboard isn't as prominent. And there are those pig castings I mentioned earlier. I really like how it's looking at this point. Even though I got the proportions a little wrong, I 3D printed some extra bits. I just forgot these little windows and I installed them a bit later. To do the shingles, I cut these out of self-adhesive cork coasters, and I use scallop scissors so that I don't have to cut out individual shingles and I could just peel and stick them. This adhesive on the back of the cork is not strong enough itself to hold it there permanently. But once you Mod Podge on top of this, or just use a regular PVA, it kind of unifies the whole piece and it makes it really structurally sound. While I'm installing all these shingles, I'd like to ask you to subscribe. If this video hasn't earned your subscription, go check out the backlog because I've been making Mordheim related videos and fantasy terrain for 2 years now, and it's something I really enjoy. If you really like the channel, support the channel for $2 a month. I provide a lot of free things. Make sure you don't miss it. We're gonna make some gutters with plastic bendy straws. I cut these in half along the line on each side, and I glued them with super glue to some balsa wood, and then I glued the balsa wood to the build itself. Plastic is pretty flimsy and it's kind of hard to get a bond between two surfaces floating in midair, so gluing it to the balsa wood first really helps out. And then you kind of Mod Podge everything together. And I used to not do this, but it really does make a difference on how well the dollar store craft paint I use sticks to this material. I like starting with a black base coat or a dark brown base coat, because if you don't make a really even coat of paint, it kind of models up the texture a bit and sinks into the recesses, allowing you to kind of play with the light, let the material kind of dictate how the building looks itself. This is why texturing the foam core is really important. With the fan brush, I mixed a bit of gray together and a bit more green color to the stonework just to kind of make it a little more mossy. I've noticed that in reference photos, stone typically doesn't look gray. The wood tends to look a lot more gray than the stone because it's a lot more weathered and the tannin in the wood gets really faded. When I mix a wood color, I tend to add a gray color with a dot of brown and a bit of blue, and that kind of gives it that really faded wood color that I typically like. To match the box art, I painted the roof blue, which is kind of sacrilegious on this channel if you don't know. I'll probably change it later. And that's it. So before we go, I'd like to just thank my patrons. If you don't know, Patreon is only $2 a month. So thank you to Leroy, Feder, Caracol, Old School FRP, Burning Heart Custom Creations, James Anders Hanover, Grim Drunk, Treborius, Andy, Corey, Mike, Nick, The Lich's Laboratory, Cabu, The Pressimus, Seb, Lori, RC3D, Jonathan, Fabio Soroso, Doom Chupacabra, Sinister Grackle, Silver Fistchin, C.J, The Enchanted Raven, What I Gotta Roll, B Up 1, Paul, Grombert, Frosty, Spire, and our newest patron, Cadius Prime. I really appreciate your guys' support. Typically on videos, I make $3 on them. So having some Patreon support really makes a huge difference. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a good one.